Obi-Doo, it's everyone's favorite boomer and vintage lens enthusiast. And today we're going to look at Asea Optical Co. Takumar Bayonet 1 to 2.5, 135 millimeter, made in Taiwan. Now, we just recently reviewed the Japanese version of this lens that doesn't say Takumar Bayonet on it. Bayonet means it's a K mount. The lens barrel underneath says made in Japan instead of made in Taiwan. This lens is a little smaller this way and slightly smaller in diameter also. What other differences are there? Oh, let's take this lens off for a minute. See, this flash thing is like a spoiler in a car. I mean, it was done for style. And what it is it makes it impossible to look at your aperture ring. This goes from 2.5 to 22, whereas the Japanese version goes to 32. Notice this one has a orange 8. I guess they decided that was the sweet spot for this lens. 4 is in blue. Now, if you look closely at the focusing ring, it says feet is blue and meters is green. And they put it on some silver ring. And sometimes it's hard to tell what is what. Well, that's definitely meters. That's feet. What does it focus down to? 1.2 meters. Slightly under 4 feet. That's neither here nor there. It's all metal, very rugged, nice looking lens. Ooh, look at that, scary, huh? Now, the difference between the Japanese version and this Taiwanese version is about 50 bucks. You can still get these around $100, but the Japanese version used to be this is slightly 100, and the Japanese version was slightly over 100. But now it seems like the Japanese version is creeping up towards 150, and this thing is remaining pretty stable. This is on the Pentax K200D. This is my default camera that I'm using for all these lenses. And it's a little bit lighter weight because it has one less optical element than the Japanese version. Otherwise, they're totally... Oh, it does have a built-in lens hood. The Japanese version does not have a built-in lens hood. So I went out, I erroneously thought that I went out on February 9th and I shot the Japanese version. No, it was March the 9th. And we're having a very anomalous winter with a couple cold days, a couple warm days, might get snow, then it rains and washes the snow away. It's very, very bizarre. And here we are on March 13th, and we're getting ready for some humongous storm where I live. They're predicting between 4 and 12 inches. So that, yeah, they really got narrowed down, don't they? But we got snow just a couple days ago, Saturday, in fact. Friday night to Saturday, so I had to shovel the snow and blow the snow on Saturday, and I stayed home. And then I went to the park Sunday. First I had to take care of some business, shopping and going somewhere, and I came back. I was able to get to the park by 9 o'clock. Oh, and it was daylight savings times too, so it was really 8 o'clock. So I got there, and there's only one car in the parking lot where I parked. So I said, wow, this is great. Of course, a lot of people were there the previous day in the afternoon, and the trails were all stomped down. The wind blew a lot of the snow off the tree limbs, and so the snow has some sort of like a crunchy texture to it that you'll see in the photos following. So I used ISO 400. I used either f8 or f11 or f16, and it was really bright out because there's snow. And so I was using fast shutter speeds like 1/1000th of a second, 1/16,000th of a second, 1/2000th of a second, stuff like that. And that eliminated any camera shake from having a long lens that would magnify any movement of the camera. Even though it does have a shake reduction, I figure, well, let's just eliminate that. So these cameras seem to like telephoto lenses. The autofocus worked really good, and it worked so good that it was so bright out I couldn't even see very well. My eyes were dazzled from the brightness of the sun. So I was looking at a viewfinder. I wasn't adapted to like the darker image, and I was having trouble seeing the focus confirmation LED light up, which is a green hexagon. But there's also a beep, and it superimposes a red dot on the viewfinder, which is on a manual lens. It's always the center dot. And so I was going by mostly the center dot. And I couldn't have a choice, really. Even if I cupped my hand over the camera, it was hard to tell if the green indicator lit up. So, okay, I'm going with the beep and the superimposed red dot, and I got really good results. For some reason, it likes really bright light, the autofocus does, or the focus confirmation, and it likes longer lenses. And even in some questionable times, I was able to focus on the screen, since this is a DSLR and it's no electronic viewfinder, it's an optical viewfinder. So I was very pleased with the results. I got 99%. Some of the pictures, well, I just couldn't tell what was happening. It was so bright out, so bright out. And even though it was only 30 degrees, it was this bright mid-March clear sun and a blue sky, plus it was reflecting off the snow. So I was getting twice the solar radiation, and even though I had a heavy jacket, I was a little bit warm, and I didn't have any gloves on, and my hands weren't cold. So I had that going for it. So I went to the park, the usual wilderness area I go to, took very similar pictures, but different pictures. And I recommend that you look at the Pentax, SMC Pentax 2.5, 35 millimeter, and you could compare it to this. It's is it apple to oranges? Is it apples to applesauce? Is it kumquats to cranberries? I can't tell, but it's similar. The camera was the same, just the lens was changed. The lens supposedly has the same parameters, which is maximum 2.5, and the same focal length is 135. But there is one other difference. The Japanese version, that says 135 and no millimeters on it. How about that? That's strange. Now, when I used the Japanese version, there was no snow on the ground, so everything was brown. It was late afternoon, and the sun was mostly behind me. Well, I did shoot some backlit things with the sun off to the side, as opposed to when I did this lens, there's a lot of snow on the ground. It was early in the morning, and I shot towards the sun, but usually down. So it had that going for it. Plus, it looks like in this photo shoot, I was using much faster shutter speeds, and there's no situation where I could shoot this thing wide open. There just wasn't. So the build quality is very similar. The focusing ring seems a little bit heavily damped. Maybe the grease hasn't been broken in yet. It's in a really excellent top-notch shape. They're at very reasonable prices. Now, how I came by this lens, I thought I was buying the Japanese one, but I bought this one instead. And then I saw that this one was made in Taiwan, and there's the one I wanted to get was made in Japan. They said, oh, the Japanese one is better than the Taiwanese version. Well, the mechanical build is the same, and I think the optical quality is really, really close. Really close. I give the edge to the Japanese version, I really do. But if you can't get the Japanese version, or you don't want to spend an extra 50% for one, then this is a really, really close second. And I could highly recommend this lens. You will not be disappointed with this lens. So without further doggy-do, let's jump right into the photos, shall we? So it's my philosophy. Take pictures or die. That's my philosophy. How was I able to take a lot of pictures lately and do these studies of different lenses is because I was between jobs. I was working for a machine shop and sheet metal concern that subcontracted out to subcontractors for defense, and they lost the contract. I don't know why they lost the contract, but they did. And so everyone got thrown out on their ear, and I filed for unemployment, and I had to do it online and call up, and then finally I got in and everything's okay. And then I find a job. I don't start for a couple of weeks, so all's well and good. I get to maintain my extravagant lifestyle. And this is the Takumar bayonet made in Taiwan. Now they have a Japanese version, which I previously reviewed, and this is like the similar wilderness area, but this is with 6 inches of snow. And it looks to me like this is a sharp lens. It's just as sharp as the SMC Pentax, which is made in Japan, but it has a different look to it. Maybe it's not as contrasty. Maybe it doesn't have the micro contrast or the IQ as the other one, but it's really close. Really, really close. Now I use the same camera, so that's been eliminated. And you know what? What's the mark of a fine lens? Be able to take pictures of detail in snow. And this thing passes the snow detail test admirably. It was able to capture this backlit branch, but on the same token, not blow out the highlights too much. So it's got that going for it too. Most of these pictures are shot at f11 and f16 and a couple f8s. I think I did a waterfall 5.6 or f4, no wide open. So that's for another test. The reason I bought these lenses is for astronomy. They're slightly faster than a 2.8, and I want to see if they lived up to their reputation of being good lenses. Sure, there's all these aftermarket 2.8 135s, and maybe they're only 4-element designs, and when you stop them down, they all look identical. But wide open at 2.8, well, you know, these things are really good, although you can't see it here. But they do control flare and ghosting extremely well, and they do have fine detail, and it worked good on the K200D, which seems to like longer lenses in bright light anyway, so it's got that going for it. The K200D is a decent camera. It takes good pictures, but you have to know its limitations. That's the thing. Everything has a limitation, whether it's technical or biological. Everything has limitations, and you got to stay within those limitations. That's part of my philosophy too. When I was a young man and I had techno lust, I couldn't satisfy it because I didn't have no money. And now that I'm an old boomer and I got some money, I could buy these lenses that I always wished I could get. And you know, they're readily available. Readily available. Look at these forlorn picnic bench. This thing, Mom, Pop, and Buddy and Sis will come here in the summer and they'll sit there and put out all their accoutrements, and will they think about how it might have had 6 inches of snow on it? No, you're just going to have your burgers and dogs and chips and soda pop and just think about the good times. This lens, did it have a harsh look? No, that's not the proper adjective I'm looking for compared to the Japanese version. This is the Takumar bayonet, which is Taiwan, and the SMC Pentax is Japanese. The Japanese version had a smooth tonal graduation to it. I don't know how to explain it. This one is closeness and sharpness and fine detail, but it doesn't just have this smooth, large range. I can't describe it. Like if you look at the water ripples. Of course, it could be there's a lot of snow there, and that was affecting the way the light was going through the lens. I did use the built-in lens hood. It's relatively short, but I figure it's better than nothing. Now, the SMC Pentax didn't have a built-in lens hood, and I was using it under different lighting conditions, which is there was no snow, everything was brown or gray or green, and whereas this thing is all whitish and bluish, and there's a huge contrast, you know, from the bright white snow to the color of the rocks or bark. But it captured the detail really well. I think it's a good lens, considering it can get it at a discount compared to the Japanese version. This wilderness area is close to my house, and I go there, and you can really get into deep woods. here's one of the very few animals I seen. It was very cold, and this guy was wading through the reed stream, and I waited for him to get up on the trail, but he wouldn't go until I turned my back, and then he bounded away. So I didn't get another picture of him, or whatever it was. And I have seen other animals there. Of course, you can see birds all the time. There's got squirrels. Are there chipmunks there? I think the bears eat the squirrels and chipmunks. There used to be a lot of bears there, but now I never seen them. I guess they were all hunted to oblivion. Or annoying bears, they capture them and they stick them in the Great Adventure Safari Park as punishment. This was at 5.6 or f4, and it looks a little flat. I don't know about that. But this is the texture of the snow that day, because all the snow that was on the branches fell off, and it sort of crinkled everything up. I think they did an outstanding job on this water. This is another f8, I believe. But look at I use a slower shutter speed, and look at the trails the droplets made. That was an unexpected bonus in that. And then the water, if you look at the close-ups of the ripples, it's amazing. You know, it's I wonder if I have the AI that could take that water and create a picture of what was actually reflecting off it. And look at how the chicanery here. It's all crenellated and everything. And here's our old friends, the ancient astronauts built these walls. People think that humans from hundreds or thousands of years ago were smart enough to build walls. No, the ancient astronauts came down in their UFOs and they used the anti-gravity devices and they stacked them all nice and neat. There must have been a big base or headquarters here, but they're long gone. They probably went back to Sigma Draconis 7 because there's no intelligent life here. And the snow really brings out the foundations because the rocks are sort of the same tonal range as the ground, and you really can't see them too good. This is a center crop. I used a vertical composition, and I just cropped out the center. This is the top of a tree stump. And here's more walls. You know, in Europe, they have things that are hundreds of years old or thousands of years old. Well, in America, these things, they aren't that old. Ancient astronauts notwithstanding. Yeah, there may be some dolmens here and there, but they're very rare. And there's really none in my neighborhood. They did have a big iron smelting furnace. There's like 3 or 4 of them around. And I knew where a second one was, and it's sort of like blew up or decayed or something. And then you think they would keep that, you know, for historical purposes. But no, they let all this stuff molder away. You know, America is like always urban renewal. You know, that's just the way it is in this country. I got my ducks in a row. Now, the trees were a little dark, and on some of them I adjusted the shadows just to bring out the tree detail, and maybe the contrast looks a little flat, but it's just the contrast is wide. You know, rather than have a harsh, you know, dark tree line, I just brought the trees up a little bit. Yeah, this thing did a real good job on the snow. I was very pleased with it. And it looks like sort of exactly what you see in your eye. And man, it was so bright, my eyes were dazzled. Now here's a perfect example of depth of field where these trees were parallel to the camera and perpendicular to the lens, and then they were within the depth of field, and you can see even the edges, they're sharp. And here's some see-through woods. It's seeing how it's the middle of March, and if we get another big snowstorm, it'll be gone in a day. Now, this looks like it's out of focus, but it's not. If you look at the branches, they're sharp, but just the water and the ice made it look like it was out of focus. And there's all this crenellated ice all over, which I found amazing. And if you move from one side to the other, it either looked blue or it looked gray, depending whether it was reflecting.